Good morning. My name is Greg Morris, and I'm excited to be going through today's question with you on Tuesday, December 10th. And we are walking through the topic this week of Did Jesus really rise from the dead? And today's question is this: read Psalm 16 and research where verses 8 through 11 are quoted in the New Testament. Spoiler alert, I'm going to tell you where it's quoted in the New Testament, but I encourage you to go read the psalm yourself and also read the passage that we'll see in just a minute. But the psalm is short enough that I'm going to read it all the way through real quick because it is really important when we're talking about the resurrection. So Psalm 16 says this: Preserve me, O God, for in you I take refuge. I say to the Lord, you are my Lord. I have no good apart from you. As for the saints in the land, they are the excellent ones, in whom is all my delight. The sorrows of those who run after another God shall multiply. Their drink offerings of blood I will not pour out, or take their names on my lips. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. The lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the night also my heart instructs me. I have set the Lord always before me, because he is at my right hand, and I shall not be shaken. Therefore my heart is glad, and my whole being rejoices. My flesh also dwells secure. For you will not abandon my soul to Sheol, or let your Holy One see corruption. You make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. So the question is, read the psalm, and then specifically looking at verses 8 through 11, find out where in the New Testament that it's found. And the answer is Acts 2, 25 through 28. And Acts 2, 25 through 28 is actually in the middle of a sermon. This is after Jesus is risen from the dead. He has ascended into heaven. And now Peter is preaching after Pentecost. This is the first sermon after Jesus has ascended into heaven. And he's defending the events that have taken place. And he's telling the crowd of people who hadn't really been around the crucifixion and the resurrection, he's telling them exactly what happened, and he's having to defend the resurrection, and he uses Psalm 16. This is what he says: Men of Israel, hear these words. Jesus of Nazareth, a man attested to you by God with mighty works and wonders and signs that God did through him in your midst, as you yourselves know. This Jesus, delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, you crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men. God raised him up, loosing the pangs of death, because it was not possible for him to be held by it. For David says concerning him, I saw the Lord always before me, for he is at my right hand, that I may not be shaken. Therefore my heart was glad, and my tongue rejoiced. My flesh also will dwell in hope. For you will not abandon my soul to Hades, or let your Holy One see corruption. You have made known to me the paths of life. You will make me full of gladness with your presence. So we see that Peter's actually using Psalm 16, 8 through 11. He's quoting that verse. He's actually applying it to Jesus. He's saying that David wasn't just singing a song, he was prophesying about what would happen to the Messiah. And namely this, that he would not stay dead. The psalm says, for you will not abandon my soul to Hades, or let your Holy One see corruption. That's exactly what happened to Jesus. He went to the grave. He went to Hades. That was the Greek word for the grave. Sheol, as we saw in the Old Testament version of it. He went there, but he didn't stay there because God did not abandon him to the grave. And he says, or let your Holy One see corruption. Jesus was only in the grave for 3 days. His body didn't rot away, did not see corruption, and he was brought back to life. And finally, it says, you have made known to me the paths of life. You will make me full of gladness with your presence. If the psalm is talking about Jesus, Jesus is the one who was shown the paths of life. He is the author of life. He showed what the path was. And now his presence in his seating in the presence of God the Father now brings him great gladness and joy, and opens the way for us as well. For good measure, I won't read the whole thing, but Peter follows up this quote by explaining. He says, listen, you might think that David was actually talking about himself in that psalm, but he wasn't. And Peter lays it out. He says, David's been dead for a long time. In fact, his grave is right nearby. We can go look at it. We can see that David is very much dead. So if he wasn't talking about himself, who was he talking about? He had to be talking about Jesus. And thankfully he was. And so as you read not just Acts and the Psalms, but all of the Old Testament especially, I encourage you to be on the lookout for ways that Jesus fulfilled these scriptures, and in particular how his resurrection fulfilled these scriptures. A lot of the New Testament shows us exactly which passages those are. As you read the Gospels, as you read Acts, as you read the rest of the New Testament, you are going to see that the authors often point back to Old Testament passages like Psalm 16 as evidence that Jesus is the Messiah. And this was only ultimately true because he rose from the dead. As Paul says, the resurrection declared Jesus to be the Son of God in power. And because of that, he fulfilled all of the prophecies. I hope that you, as you read the scriptures, you see this for yourself, and that you continually thank God for the resurrection, because it is why we believe what we believe. It is the cornerstone of our faith.